Live the life you love.
All right, we are live. I'm excited to introduce everyone to Miss Kendall Corso. Kendall, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely a subject matter we're going to talk about today that's very important in the music industry, and we haven't really had a lot on the podcast. I'm really excited to have you. But before we get to the heavy stuff, you went to school at FAU, and I used to live in Delray Beach. Are you from Florida? What was your life in FAU like? What did you study over there?
So I was born and raised in Palm Beach, Florida, but I actually went to boarding school in Connecticut, and then I started my college in Richmond, Virginia, University of Richmond, and then I was in a really bad car accident.
No.
Yeah, it was scary, and I broke my back, and it totally shook up my whole world, but I moved home and I finished school at FAU, did the last year and a half, and I studied communication studies and rhetoric and minored in psychology and English.
Awesome. And how'd you end up in the music industry?
I grew up around music forever, and that whole intense environment of the music industry, being backstage and just the back end of things always really intrigued me and intimidated me in a profound way. So all of my jobs have been in the music industry, with the exception of a little hospitality work during college.
Awesome. Very cool. And you just founded a new company called Backline. I guess tell everyone a little bit of what Backline is and all the things that you guys do.
Sure. So Backline is actually a nonprofit pending. So we launched last fall, basically after a series of suicides in the music industry, specifically in the jam community, which is where I reside. And it started with a couple of task force calls, realizing what doesn't exist to help this community during their difficult lifestyle. And we built a platform to really house some of the organizations that are already doing the good work, and then actually help pair people with the help they need to survive the industry.
Okay. And you guys have therapists working for you guys, or how does it all work? If someone reaches out to you, what is the process of them getting to someone that's helping them with their mental health?
Sure. So anyone in the music industry and their families too can go to our website and fill out a form to be connected with a case manager, which is one of our clinicians on staff. And they set up a time to chat and really talk through what they're struggling with, what their financial situation might be, if they have insurance, what type of therapist they're looking for, if they're looking for one where they live, or teletherapy, and just really go through to figure out what they're really looking for. And then the clinicians do the vetting process and match them with therapists within the Backline network that meet the criteria of being able to slide their scale so that the music community can afford them, but also have some sort of experience in the music industry to really be able to speak to that topic.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And before we dive a little deeper, you worked in the music industry quite a bit. So I guess kind of fill in the gap between when you graduated from FAU to when you started Backline, so people kind of understand your background in the music industry. I know there's a lot of production work, working live events, festivals. I saw.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty fun story. So when I think it was my senior year of college, I had my first internship with a company called Music Masters Camps, and they have throughout the summer, every week, different music masters camps that are curated by, there was an Allman Brothers one, there's a King Crimson one, Robin Ford, all sorts of people that people would want to spend a week with in the woods, and it's up in the Catskills. So I interned for 7 weeks living in a yurt by a creek by myself. Awesome. And it was a learning experience for sure, but I kind of helped with all the marketing and event production there. And my godfather led me to that camp because he had a camp with the Allman Brothers band. So my godfather was Butch Trucks, the drummer, who tragically took his life a couple of years ago. So my whole professional career really comes full circle around him. So that was my introduction. So that summer is when I met Brandon Niederauer, who is a 17-year-old guitar player, who is widely recognized as, you know, a special guest on many stages. He sat in with TTB, Widespread Panic, String Cheese.
Wow.
He's just this little jam band kid. And that's where I met him and started helping his family kind of carve out his career and lead them into different introductions. And he eventually made it onto the Ellen Show, and then his whole career kind of took off. So once I finished college, I actually got in the car, went on a little fish tour, and drove to New York to help the Niederauer family as Brandon transitioned into his role at Broadway School of Rock. So Taz and I lived in a little apartment in New York. This is my first time living in New York. And I helped him rehearse his lines and do his schoolwork in between practice and get ready for this Broadway role. And while I was doing that, I was looking for work. I knew that if I wanted to work in New York, I had to just get there and figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got there and I started figuring it out. And basically the day that Taz started his Broadway show, School of Rock the Musical, I got hired by Live for Live Music. And yeah, Live for Live Music is basically a jam band blog, and they produce a lot of events too. And when I started working with them is really when they started producing events. So within my first year there, we had a music festival in St. Augustine, Florida, called Fool's Paradise.
I love St. Augustine.
So nice. And that was really, really fun. And that was my first introduction, like in a real role where I was responsible for real things. And it was really fun. We had Lettuce and Grizz and J-Rad and just a whole mix of people. And that was just like me thriving, you know. I've realized throughout all of this that I really do thrive in chaos. I used to work in hospitality in the restaurant industry, and like I do best in the most of high pressure situations. So
what was your role with that festival?
I was like artist relations, I guess. I was liaisoning between the artists' like whole experience with the festival, but also coordinating all of their excursions with the fans, which was really fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, and like ticketing and kind of we wear a lot of hats at Live for Live Music. But the reason that I was so excited to start there is because I didn't really know in what direction I wanted to go in the music industry. And I got to work every role imaginable. I mean, I've done PR, a lot of writing, interviews, production, guest services, like just a lot of experience all over the place, so I could really cross out in my own experience like what I liked and didn't like. And after 5 years of being there, I ended up taking over operations, and that's when I started bringing in new revenue streams through ad placements and really learning like that back end stuff for a media blog. And it was super duper fun. But I reached my ceiling and got married last summer.
Awesome.
And
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So that's when I left Live for Live and kind of started doing my own thing.
Okay, awesome. I saw you also on your LinkedIn that you worked Crawfish Festival in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah,
I used to live in New Orleans, and that's where I met my wife. And
amazing.
I'm wearing a NOLA shirt today.
I love it. I love it. Wish we were there right now for
right.
Yeah, we did a couple of years of NOLA Crawfish with Shaggy, the infamous Shaggy.
Awesome.
And that was fun. I was less involved in the day-to-day and more involved from the editorial perspective and marketing and working with the artists on that lineup to produce content to promote the event. But I got the bulk of my live event experience with the Memphis Music Festival, which launched 3-4 years ago. And I was on that original team helping. I mean, really, it was a bunch of my dad's friends that I met through going to see the Allman Brothers that were like, we need you on this team. And they flew me to Memphis, and I was on that team for 2 years, and then realized I just couldn't like do everything at the same
Yeah.
time. So yeah.
So I have a lot of students that listen to the podcast that want to get into like working festivals and working live events. Knowing what you know today, what advice would you give them how to kind of get into a role like that? How do they work their way like in or up?
I think it definitely volunteering is a good way to start, because it's how you build rapport with the people that are going to be making the decisions of who joins the team. There's such a family vibe, and you have to like vibe with each other in order to work in those situations. So I think it's definitely a good idea to volunteer and see if you like it, first of all, too,
Right.
and start to create those relationships in advance, so that when you are ready to be a paid employee, it's like a shoe-in situation.
Yeah. Very cool. I always thought I wanted to work festivals. It's just always something exciting about them. But then after having worked a few festivals, I love being in a PAC and having the AC running and being indoors. I mean, I love outdoors, but in Florida, it can get pretty hot when you're working a festival.
Oh yes.
And the festivals are always in the summer in Florida when they should be in the fall.
Does not make sense.
Yeah. So what inspired you? You talked about it a little bit. What inspired you to start Backline?
So mental health in the music industry has become more and more prevalent over the last couple of years. And especially last summer when we experienced the deaths of Neil Casal and Jeff Austin so close to each other. It was a real big wake-up moment for our community, and also for the industry to kind of get together and ask, how they could help this situation. So obviously I have personal ties to mental health in the music industry, and my experience working in the industry has also led to the obvious conclusion that it's really fucking hard. And there's not a lot about working events, or even on not working events. Any part of the industry is kind of a 24/7 gig with not a lot of office hours or structure. So I think that can be really consuming and draining, especially for people that are driven to work in the industry and never want to let people down. So we really started with the approach of trying to help these kind of the higher ups understand the need for prioritizing mental health in order for better team morale and just overall productivity. But in the wake of COVID, it's best that we go to the source and really start talking to the people that are living day to day, now that they have this time to really think about, what they are struggling with and how they can combat it.
And of course, there's like a wide range of mental health issues, but what are some of the most common things that you see? What are some of the most common calls that you guys get, or people reaching out to you guys?
Financial instability is definitely a big one. That's a huge cause for stress. Of course, everybody knows that, but the gigging economy even furthers that fear and anxiety, and it's very real. And when you're spending life on the road, it's difficult for people to maintain their adulthood, if you will, and like cover their asses where they're supposed to be. The lack of structure and routine is another big one. It's really hard to stay healthy and to eat nutritiously and incorporate regular exercise when you're working till 5 a.m. at a show, or load out is super early, or whatever it is. So definitely the lack of routine is not on the mental health, with diet and exercise, of course. And then there's, long distance relationships and difficulty to keep relationships strong with partners, with family, with friends, if you're constantly traveling.
Absolutely.
I think those are like the top. And substance abuse, unfortunately, is definitely furthered by the environment that the music industry exists.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you would tell me hey, you're gonna have this job that's really fun, it's really cool, but you're gonna work endless hours, work with all kinds of challenging personalities, probably never gonna see your family. Like, why do people want to get into this field?
You know, there's so many rewards,
Yeah.
whether it's access to amazing music all the time or that feeling of accomplishment when you're planning a show or planning a tour or whatever it is, and to see it come to life and to see
Mhm.
how it affects other people, it's like the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
It could be the most stressful lead up to that moment ever. You could be cursing it, never want to do this again, what am I doing? And then you see thousands of people or even a couple of people just totally into it, and it's a really rewarding feeling.
Absolutely, yeah. What can people do? So, like, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different issues that people deal with when they're on the road: financial, substance abuse, probably depression associated with the financial issues, and being away from family. And then you have sometimes these really tough, like, production managers and tour managers that are either from an old school mentality, or they're younger and they've learned from someone that's old school, and they're like, that's not sometimes the nicest people to deal with, especially in a stressful situation.
Hmm.
Is there anything we can do to make, I guess, our industry just more mindful and caring towards one another?
I think that, yes, I think the more transparent people are about where they're at, and if they need to take a couple of minutes or if they need some extra hours budgeted in to work, practice self-care and to respect others' self-care, I think that
Mhm.
would go a long way, because there's almost a competitional spirit in the air to
Right.
like who can work harder and
Right.
push harder, and that's all wonderful, but it's not going to lead to positive results in the long end.
Mhm. That's so interesting because people have like this badge of honor when they don't take vacations. Like, I haven't taken a vacation in 10
Right,
years,
right.
or um, yeah, I
Yeah.
work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, whatever. And it's like a
And
badge of honor,
mhm.
but in an all, like, just life perspective and health perspective, that's not really a good way to live. So what are some things that people maybe could do to have a little bit better self-care while they're on the road?
Well, we're certainly trying to bring a lot of resources like that through Backline, through partnerships. Like, there's a wonderful organization, Fit on Tour,
Mhm.
and they teach exercises that could be easily executed in your hotel room or
Mhm.
in a tour bus, or at a gas station on the side of the road, and to just incorporate small acts of kindness to yourself,
Yeah.
um, through healthy eating choices, through even just stretching, like giving your body some love so it's not all tight, filled with
Mhm.
all of the energy that you've been consuming. You need to let it out. It's so, so important. So I certainly think that it's a two-way street. The artists can only do so much to support themselves, and the touring personnel can only do so much to support themselves. So one of
Mhm.
our missions with Backline is to help the venues that they're stopping at become these
Mhm.
access points,
Mhm.
so the venue can say, here's our list of resources in our neighborhood. If you
Right.
need a massage, you can get a discount with Our Lady here. Or if you want to, bring a chiropractor in, we can add that onto the rider. And
Mhm.
of course, all of those plans have kind of gone out the window for
Right.
now, but that's really the goal, is to meet the industry where they are and help bring these resources to them.
Mhm.
And even higher than that, I think, what we'll get to a point in time where labels and management contracts have things like therapy on
Right.
their contracts, like
That'd be great.
it should be part of the whole deal. There are
Mhm.
therapists that go on tour with bands, and
Mhm.
not necessarily because they really need it, but because it's just healthy to talk it out and to
Right.
not let things build up between people that are stuck in a van or a bus for weeks at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool that you guys are reaching out to the venues. Like, how does that work? Like, is there certain types of venues that you guys are reaching out to, and then what's that conversation like with the venues? And is a loaded question, but if
Yeah.
a venue wanted to get involved, how do they get in? Like, how do they reach out to you guys?
Sure. So we have a submission form on our website, and at the basic level, what we've launched with is our one-pagers, which is just like an informational, here's a free resource for you if you need it, music industry people, and they hang it backstage in their green rooms, in the common areas back of house, and that's been really step one. And we have those one sheets in like 75 venues around the country right now.
Awesome.
And it's pretty amazing. The people that have come through our case management program have learned about it through seeing the signs in the venues. That's really step one, is to like slowly ease Backline and its offerings into the conversation without making it weird.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't want to say you're acting up, you should go get a therapist, but rather it's, hey, did you know that you can talk to someone and figure out what might work best for you?
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely step one. And my dream is to create a certification program with these venues that want to take it a step further by really helping to connect them with our regional and national resources that could be of service to the people coming through their venues.
That's awesome. What would a certification look like? How for a venue to get certified with you guys? I mean, what's the vision?
Again, that's not created yet, but it would be, you including line items in your rider for additional add-ons and just language in your advanced materials that encourage you to use this as an access point to either healthy food or some sort of body work, and just to bake that into the plan.
Right. Not just pizza and beer.
Encouragement, not just pizza and beer. Make it easy.
Right. You mentioned you did that festival in St. Augustine, and there's an amphitheater there. I don't know if you've been to St. Augustine Amphitheater.
That's where it was.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys had a massage therapist that day, but they worked out something really cool, which could be like also a great tip for venues. The massage therapist is really big into music, and she goes to pretty much as many shows as she wants. And in return, she just does massage for free for the artist and the touring personnel. They can leave tips if they wanted to, but pretty much every show has the option to have a massage therapist there, which I think is something really great.
Amazing.
That they're doing.
Yeah, I definitely had that when we were in Florida. It's so important. Yeah. And another thing that we were working on before COVID happened was bringing this to festivals. So I had built out this mental health and wellness program for festivals to adopt backstage. And the way that looked was having our clinical team deliver these workshops that are specifically targeting some of the top stressors, and providing them for free backstage, and then bringing in practitioners, whether it's a yogi or a massage therapist or something to encourage movement. But that didn't happen.
What are some baby steps of something that somebody can do? So let's say they're sleeping 4 to 6 hours a night because they're working from say 7 8 till 1 a.m. the next day. They are eating terrible. Maybe it's a tour that doesn't have as big of a budget. Maybe it is mostly pizza and junk food. They're eating donuts. Let's say they're drinking too on top of it. What are some small adjustments that, or maybe steps? So first you're going to do this small adjustment and then do that for a week, and then you move on to this small adjustment. What are some steps that people could do to just live physically healthier? Because that'll obviously affect mental health as well.
Yeah. So I would say getting out of the bed as soon as you can, and not using staying up late as an excuse to sleep in. Second to that, I would say going outside is like after you wake up and just getting direct sunlight for 30 minutes. And even better, use that 30 minutes to take a walk. Even just a walk, it's getting those endorphins going. It could change the path of your entire day without it being a lot of effort. So I definitely think waking up at a normal hour, getting the sunlight, and going on a small walk could change everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then once that becomes a habit, then you just take it a little bit step farther. Maybe you take a longer walk. Maybe you incorporate some 30 minutes of stretching later in the day.
Mhm.
And then you're getting tired earlier, and you don't need the alcohol to kind of settle in at the end of the day.
Right.
And when you're not drinking alcohol and you're not feeling sluggish all the time, you probably aren't craving the bad food either.
Mhm. Yeah.
So smoothies are awesome because you really feel the energy that those fruits and veggies are giving you. And it's like such an easy way to be like, how does this make you feel? Okay, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
And people can notice a difference, and then maybe start adjusting their diet around eating food that actually fuels them.
Mhm. Those are some really good tips. And two other important things with the tips you just gave is, when you go out right away in the morning and the sun hits you. I'm a big health and fitness freak. So there's a lot of podcasts, and a lot of woo-woo stuff too. But if you wake up right in the morning and you go out into the sun, it's also going to help regulate your circadian rhythm, which makes you tired when you should be getting tired. And then the other catch-22 is with alcohol. Like if you need alcohol to wind you down, and actually disrupts your sleep, and you don't get as good quality of sleep, which again is throwing everything into that vicious cycle, right? That people just go through.
And if you were to stop drinking for a couple of weeks, which like I've experienced firsthand, I could drink very casually for most of my life, and then I stopped drinking for weeks or months at a time, only because my husband doesn't really drink and I don't want to just drink by myself. I can't even have like a sip of wine without it disrupting my sleep now.
Right.
Kind of sucks because it means I'm not like able to enjoy it anymore, but it really is disrupting to your natural REM cycles. And yeah, so if you can get yourself to a place where you can try not to drinking for 30 days, I think you would feel like amazing improvement. Yeah.
Do y'all teach anything about meditation, and then to get to the woo stuff I talked about, or earthing? I know we know about earthing.
Yeah. So so when summer got canceled, we kind of pivoted all of our Backline offerings to be virtual experiences. So for me, that was an opportunity to connect with some of our partner organizations like Fit on Tour, like the Tour Research Health Initiative, and like Frequency Mind, to create these virtual offerings. So once a week we have meditation, once a week we have breath work, once a week we have yoga. And those are all free on our social media pages.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that's definitely something that we're trying to encourage without over encouraging it. It's just like, this is going to help you feel better. We're going to push it in front of you. You have the time, like you got to be accountable. So, and it's, people have been really receptive to that. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And are these like videos or
yeah, they're live on Facebook and Instagram Live. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And on Facebook, they can probably rewatch those and those exercises later on.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So how do people identify someone is struggling with something, right? Because I've heard a lot of stories, and you've mentioned Neil earlier, Neil Casal. He's been on the podcast, and he's like, he was one of the nicest, most kindest people like I've ever talked to, and he took so much extra time. Like, supposed to only have 30 minutes, and we talked for like an hour and 15 minutes. I've heard stories of Robin Williams, him being backstage at shows and literally talking to everyone, talking to the security, talking to the janitor. It didn't matter, whoever. If he saw a person, he would approach you and talk to you. And you think, man, these people are so nice and so kind. And then they're dealing with something that we have absolutely don't know about. And then they take their life, unfortunately. How do we identify someone is struggling with something, and when is it okay to help or interfere?
Sure. So I think if in situations that you just described, where it's not overtly obvious that they're dealing with something, I think it's not so much of what signs are you looking for, but just to more so be aware that everyone's kind of going through shit, even though you might not be able to see it, and to make yourself available, and to also just be comfortable having conversations of, talking about your own mental health, because even if you're not clinically depressed, like we all have these internal battles, and to normalize that conversation and to talk about the resources that exist might influence people that are really struggling and not comfortable to reach out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I guess what are some things that we could do to maybe have like different conversations while we're on road and on tour? Like what can someone do to be more mindful of having more important conversation versus just like the surface level stuff? Like are there
Right.
any suggestions for like conversation starters or topics that people should try to be more comfortable to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally being open about how people feel about things, and how, you know, maybe a situation has transpired and you need, you know, I feel like people are always so buttoned up and try to
Mm-hmm.
ignore situations, but if you just ask, so how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
It kind of opens the floor to a deeper conversation that people go to a vulnerable place to, you know, achieve a new level.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's gonna be hard to change some people in just in it for a long time, but maybe like the leaders, like those tour managers or production managers, maybe if they lash out at someone and they know they did something wrong to where they're gonna apologize instead of just saying sorry, maybe just asking, hey, sorry I did this, but just curious, like how did it make you feel?
Right, right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and really just identifying and being open about potential triggers. And you know, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm not from the clinical team, but from what I've learned through my amazing coworkers is really just, it's about conversations and being upfront, asking more than telling. Would you prefer, or like just trying to stay on the same page about things. I know it's not easy at all, but feelings are okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the moral of the story, is people need to be comfortable talking about how things make you feel before it gets worse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We went into 2020 looking like it's going to be potentially the biggest touring year in history. And all of a sudden we come to a complete stop with COVID-19. How has COVID-19 affected maybe the people you're working with and just our industry in general for people that are making their living on the road?
Yeah, so it's really devastated the industry from every angle. It's, you know, most people just got off their off season, ready to hit the road hard in spring and summer. And now everything that they had been working towards has been ripped out from under them. And a lot of these people really are working gig to gig, and don't have health insurance. And there's just a lot of fear going on. People that tour a lot tend to not have their own living situation. It's an easy way to save money, to maybe bunk up with some other touring people that, you know, you probably might not be there at the same time, but now they're stuck on top of each other, you know, stuck indoors, stuck
Mm-hmm.
not knowing when they're going to get paid, how they're going to get paid.
Right.
And then, so it's affected people financially, obviously, which is not good for the mental health.
No, absolutely not.
But unfortunately, I've seen a lot of addiction relapsing happening, and people having to go into recovery, and just really, really sad things coming out of this. And I unfortunately feel like it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't have jobs and people aren't hiring.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what's got to change for that to save our short-term industry, but there's just a lot of fear and anxiety going on. So to kind of meet the demand there, Backline launched these virtual support groups basically the week that like shit was hitting the fan, like
Yeah.
when everything was getting canceled, and just bad news after bad news back in March, I think the second week of March. So we launched these virtual support groups over Zoom, and we had over 300 people join that
Oh,
first
wow.
week. And it was just incredible because, I mean, people were very vulnerable and just wanted to share their story. Another thing about the music industry is typically your family doesn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing something that doesn't pay you and
Right.
doesn't give you health insurance and like makes you so stressed out?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people feeling like their families feeling let down by the reaction of their family and friends that they're in this position because of the industry that they're in. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really just, I mean, no one obviously has control that you can't have large gatherings.
Right. Yeah.
That's literally our bread and butter. So so that first week of support calls was just really powerful to hear so many people trading stories and then feeling better at the end of it,
Mm-hmm.
feeling relieved, like, okay, I'm not in this alone. Like, we're all as a community in a terrible place, but we can get through this together because like we're all creative, smart people that will figure this out. And
Yeah.
a lot of groups on Facebook have popped up of people just trading information and resources. Oh, have you checked out this relief fund? Have you applied for this grant? And just really sharing information right now to help each other get through this really difficult time. And
Mm-hmm.
our support groups have continued twice a week since,
Awesome.
and they've been just amazing. They've decreased in size, which is preferable for a support group setting. And there's this familial vibe going on of accountability, people maybe having a tough day, but looking forward to seeing their friends on the other end of that Zoom call. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you got people are just finding new and creative ways to lift their spirits up in an otherwise dark time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely comforting for people to talk to other people in the same boat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where do people find these support groups? Or those resources all on your website, or like how do you find out about them?
Yeah, they're on our website and social media, backline.care/come together. So Come Together is the program that we launched for the COVID relief efforts. And that is our virtual support groups as well as our virtual wellness offerings. And
Well,
we're
I'm gonna
going to,
share the website.
yeah, awesome. Yeah. If you click on COVID-19, I'm redoing the website, so
Okay.
don't judge.
For those who listen to the audio, if you go to backline.care and then there's a tab that says COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And okay.
Yeah, so that's our schedule. It changes monthly depending on our support organizations, but all of our offerings are really catered to music industry professionals that are without work and responsibility right now and might want to take the plunge in starting new things like yoga, like meditation, like breath work, and discovering these new easily adoptable practices that
Awesome.
might help them when they do return to the workforce in some of those stressful anxiety driven situations.
Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of great things you guys are offering. So weekly Monday and Thursday support groups, weekly yoga on Saturdays, through Facebook Live and Instagram Live on the Backline social media pages, weekly breath work on Tuesdays, and then weekly meditations. That's awesome. A lot of great service that you guys offer.
Yeah.
Who are the people that offer these classes, like, or teach these classes? Do you teach any of those, or who are the people
No.
that offer those?
I mediate the support groups, or
Okay.
I'm like the moderator. But this is when our partner organizations come into play, and I really want Backline to serve as this like platform for other people's works to come together and shine, because we can't do it all. So Fit on Tour is doing our yoga classes, and they're awesome. Like I mentioned earlier, they're really catering their offerings to the touring community, and so everything that comes from them is just so aligned with what we're doing. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're yoga on Saturdays. And then Frequency Mind is a studio in New York that they brand themselves as emotional fitness, which I also really love.
Nice.
And they have a lot of meditation, breath work, all of that woo-woo stuff. And they've pivoted to offer their classes virtually. So I have the co-founder, Vivian, who is leading the breath work on Tuesdays, and then one of their advisors, Alexa, who's leading the meditations on Wednesdays. And then the support groups is partnership with Dr. Chaim Newman from the Tour Research Health Initiative. And he's actually one of our clinical advisors at Backline. He's an amazing guy, and his profession leads him to tour with a lot of bands. And he's been doing that forever. And he created Thrive to conduct a research study for the touring personnel to really identify those top stressors about their work life. So that survey started going out last fall, and I think wraps up in the next month or so. And it's a 45-minute survey for touring personnel to go through. And we'll be working very closely with that organization to use that research to, help change the music industry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. It's so needed in our industry. So I'm excited to see companies like yours and doing what you guys are doing. It's such a honorable thing to do. What advice would you give to someone? Because like, if you're on the bottom of the totem pole, if you're just starting out, you probably make the least amount of money. You probably get stuck with the most amount of at least tedious work. Production tour managers, of course, do a lot of work, but they oversee a lot of stuff. What advice would you give to someone that's kind of on the bottom, or even on a small tour where the teams are not as big, where they maybe don't feel comfortable speaking up because they have a really tough and challenging boss, and someone that's maybe not very open-minded to these types of things?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say you should always speak up because you're going to fail if you don't.
Yeah.
But it's difficult with a hard boss. I'm the type of person that if I don't like who I'm working with, then I'm going to move on, Yep. And I think that that's important to have that type of self-respect. And you're going to, in the long run, be respected for making a decision like that, because you want to make sure that the environment that you're putting yourself in isn't toxic. But you don't always have control over a situation like that. And I think my approach has always just been like the most positive, energized helper possible, and really just trying to go above and beyond to show my value to the team on whatever that project is.
That's such good advice too. Just trying to be more positive and being in a better spirit. Like, just put yourself in a good spirit, and it's easier said than done, but it's so true. Like, even if you're having a tough day and your boss is having a tough day too, and is just taking it out on you, by being more positive and trying just to keep things, I guess, more friendly, it makes a big difference how those people react to you. Because if you're going to be just as in a bad mood as they are, and you're going to be react negative to everything, it just makes your day worse. So even though it's still bad, you can still make it better by trying to change your mindset towards situations.
Right. And it also boosts morale on other people, with other people on the team, to maybe, instead of react to a situation, take some time to respond to it. Yeah.
And there's definitely, I feel like there's going to be a change of guard, maybe especially after this is all over. And I feel like the world is changing, and people are becoming more mindful and want these types of things more in their workplace, especially in the music industry. I feel like the people that are the positive, hard workers and the go-getters, those are going to be the next leaders in our industry, which I think is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, you want to be friendly, because that's how your network is so important too, and the more events you work and the more people you cross paths with and create those relationships, it's just fun to think about, what those relationships are going to look like in 20 years.
Yeah, it's funny because I come more from maybe the rock world, but now I'm more into like soul, R&B, things like Leon Bridges, just mellow music, New Orleans music. But so never expected. One of my favorite shows I ever worked was Yanni. I've never listened to Yanni ever. Of course, know who he was because he's a giant artist, but his crew was so awesome. They had a no yelling and no asshole policy.
Love it.
If you yelled at anyone or you were just a jerk, you get in trouble and maybe even kicked off the tour. And everyone on that tour was just so nice. They all worked hard, and it was just so pleasant to be like around a crew like that. I just love seeing something like that.
Yeah, that's important. I think setting guidelines and boundaries is also an important way to create whatever environment you're trying to get.
Hmm. Absolutely. So I have a few last couple little wrap up questions for you. What's the most common bad advice that you hear given in our industry?
Bad advice. Um,
So something you repeatedly hear people say as advice, and then always makes you kind of cringe. Like, oh, why are they telling me this?
yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between being persistent and being annoying. Don't,
Hmm.
and I think it's important to be persistent, but don't email someone more than once a day, multiple days in a row, because we don't respond kindly to that.
Yeah. Yep.
So I
So that-
guess, yeah, don't be too persistent. Like my mom would always be like, if you want something, show up on their front door. I'm like, Mom.
yeah, that is a fine line. How does, I guess, someone know what is being annoying and what is being persistent? Like how do you know you're not giving up and not working hard
Right.
enough? But then how do you know when you start being annoying?
I mean, as long as you're conscious that the person on the other end of the computer probably has hundreds of emails a day, then you're probably being respectful of how long it might take for someone to respond to you.
Hmm.
But I definitely think that past the 1 day mark is like okay to follow up on something urgent or
Hmm.
text them or call them or something. But I don't know. It depends on the situation, I
Yeah.
guess. It really does. You don't want to get too far into someone's inbox.
Yeah. And don't email and then call and then text within like 5 minutes of each
No,
other.
I've got that. When I worked at Live for Live Music, I had a lot of publicists doing that.
Oh
And
God.
for me, that really was a deal breaker.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is
Like,
for me too.
I can't.
Yeah. It's like, I probably could call you in about an hour from now, but now I'm going to put you on the back of my list.
Yeah. Like, just be cool, be respectful. I mean, such is life, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone's going through their own stuff and dealing with their own things. And if it's time sensitive and the other person isn't cooperating with whatever schedule you're trying to work within, then you can like be upset about that. But if
Mhm.
it's about a request and you're simply reaching out for a favor or whatever it is, like just be chill.
Yeah.
Everybody's email system is different, right? Like I read everything as soon as it comes in, but then I flag it and I think, okay, like when I have the brain capacity to respond to that fully, I will. But if it's an urgent matter that like needs my attention right away, then that's how I answer my emails.
Yeah. Speaking of just be chill in emails, are you familiar with Grammarly?
Yeah.
So Grammarly has this new feature. I don't know if you use it, but it has this new feature. Not only does it check the spelling of your email and your grammar, it also checks now the tone of your email. So is your
No
email
way.
friendly or is it an angry email? So if you have
Oh God.
so you have an issue with writing angry emails, maybe install Grammarly and
Yeah.
it'll help you make your emails a little more friendly. It's
Yeah.
definitely changed the way I emailed. Sometimes I'll email and it'll just be the intention of being a friendly email, but for some reason Grammarly says it's very just neutral or monotone.
Right.
Oh, I need to change it up a little bit.
Right. Well, when you're like, I don't know, going back and forth on a deal or some information or details, especially in the industry, it's like people will respond to full paragraphs with like a half a sentence.
Yeah.
And you can't take offense to that either.
No, yeah, people are busy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what were you gonna say?
Just email etiquette.
Yes. Keep it short.
Yeah.
And then the opposite of bad advice, what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
To always have multiple sources of income.
Yes.
Like never depend on any one thing, and if you're able to create some sort of side hustle or an easy way to have reliable money coming in on the side, it's just a good idea to save yourself. And I think that most people in the music industry kind of have to work multiple gigs in order to meet ends meet, but even if it's something small outside of music,
Mm-hmm.
you'll just have that cushion.
Yeah. There's lots of time in a car or in a bus or in a van driving from city to city where people can definitely work a side hustle. And I know we're not financial advisors, but I love looking into side hustles and teaching about side hustles. Do you have any
Yeah.
favorite side hustles that you like sharing?
Well, social media is like a little bit of a side hustle for me. So I manage a couple of accounts, and
Awesome.
that's the type of thing where it requires a couple hours a week. And it pays some money.
Yeah. Is that something that you got just from like reaching out to artists and asking, or I don't know if it's artists, but to people or companies and asking if, I guess, how'd you get those social media gigs?
Yeah, so I still do Brandon Niederauer's social media.
Okay.
I'm also like kind of on his management team.
Oh, cool.
So that's just like my ongoing, it's more than a side hustle, but I've taken over some restaurant ones before.
Awesome.
And yeah, so just things that are small weights, I guess.
Yeah.
But I have spent a lot of time trying to think of other side hustles, and it's not that easy. If you can create an online store with like something that you are good at, that's great. But I don't know what my long-term side hustle is.
And then there's also Fiverr and Upwork. I don't know if you're familiar with those. I mean, I would say most people in the music industry have multiple skills, and there's all kinds of skills offered on those sites, like from copywriting to translating if you speak a different language, to transcribing podcasts and lectures into text. There's so many services on there that you can do from the road, from a laptop.
Certainly.
Yeah. What is something that you would like to see change in our industry?
Well, my whole mission with Backline is prioritizing mental health and wellness. So really making sure that that's part of every conversation, that there's respect around schedules and time constraints and what people are offering for others to consume. So I think just that, I mean, it's way beyond normalizing the conversation and more about doing.
Right.
So whether that's putting a therapist on the road or getting, a trainer once or twice a week in different cities, or just making a real effort to make sure that the food that people are eating on the road is clean and healthy. And yeah.
Awesome. And when the tour managers take that initiative too, like, yes, sometimes those things seem like they're going to cost more money or extra money. It makes such a difference, and your people are going to work harder. They're going to care more about their work, and it just makes everything better. I think that relief of mental stress and physical stress by encouraging tourists to do things like that is just better for like your longevity in life. And
exactly.
Yeah, probably gonna be able to work longer, probably be able to have healthier, longer relationships, maybe have lasting relationships. So it's so awesome that you guys are doing these things.
Right, exactly.
So a few last fun questions. When you think of the word successful, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Oh my God. The first person that comes to mind was successful. I mean, the hilarious people are coming to mind right now.
Like who? Like who?
Oh God. One of my good friends, Ben Baruch, he's a successful dude, and he's just kind of the type of person that has his hands in a lot of different things and is just like a startup king. I can't believe it's just, I think when people imagine the word successful, they think of like someone in a suit, right?
Right.
And I think someone that's successful is they've created multiple businesses that, don't require a lot of effort from the person the founder, and can kind of just self-operate. But he's also a creative. He manages bands and does a lot of booking for festivals.
Oh, cool. Nice. What was your first concert, or tell me about your first memorable concert experience?
Yeah. Oh my God. My first concert was so cool. So I think it was at Sunfest, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
interesting.
So back in the day, Butch had a band called Frog Wings. This lineup is ridiculous if you're familiar with the jam band world, but It was Butch Trucks, Warren Haynes,
Mm.
Jimmy Herring from Widespread Panic, Derek Trucks, John Popper from Blues Traveler, and like the whole percussion section, Oteil Burbridge of the Allman Brothers
wow.
Band.
That's
so
awesome.
It's like this Allman Brothers Band side project / amazing supergroup. So that, I guess it was Sunfest because it was down by the waterfront in downtown West Palm. And then they all came to my house after for like a barbecue or something.
Oh, fun.
And I was 6 or 7 years old, just totally living life. Like, this is the coolest ever. Look at these rock stars. I was on stage, just like, wow, looking out at the crowd. And then I think my second concert after that was the Spice Girls.
That's polar opposite.
Yeah. But I mean, I've probably seen over 100 Allman Brothers shows in my time.
Wow.
And in all sorts of different places. I went to Red Rocks when I was like 8 and saw them there. Barely remember it. I went on a little tour with them in California. Also, when I was in middle school, I've seen like dozens and dozens of shows at the Beacon Theater when they did their residencies there in March. Cool. And then all of the Wani music festivals and beach festivals. And yeah, so they're such an interesting band. Obviously they're incredible musicians, but their history is really just like tragic and dark and twisted and full of death and addiction and just all sorts of bad things. So seeing the way that band coped backstage, rules like no alcohol past this point, or nobody talked to this person, or there's just like a lot. I mean, those people were getting famous when they were 18, 19 years old. And they say that you stop growing in the tracks of the age that you get famous.
Oh, wow.
So
interesting.
Yeah, so there's just a lot, but it was such an intense energy back there. And there was such an expectation to like be on your best behavior if you were going to exist in that environment, which is a very short list of people who could. And me being one of them just put a lot of pressure on me, but also seeing how intense it was backstage, and then for them to walk on stage and just like blow people's minds was such a formative experience for my passion for music. And my forever quest has always been to figure out how to really align passion with purpose. I knew I was never going to be, someone. I've never worked in an office, first of all.
Oh, awesome. I'm jealous.
I've always tried to figure out how to do work within the spheres of things that are interesting and motivating to me, even if it's in like a workaround weird way, where I can still live my life and not report really to other people. But yeah, I mean, I don't play an instrument or anything, but my passion for music and where that's brought me through life has really influenced why I started working in this industry.
Awesome. That's a cool story. What is something that you're currently interested in? So not business related. It could be an app, it could be a TV show, a guilty pleasure, an exercise, food, whatever.
My mother got the Peloton.
Oh, fun. Those are awesome.
So like in quarantine, like my answer is going to be super boring, right? So that has been so fun for me, because it also comes with an app. Right now, I think the app is giving free classes for 90-day signups. So I encourage everyone to take advantage of that, because the exercises are for all levels and all different durations. So I'll do like a 10-minute exercise here and a 10-minute exercise there. And it's just been helping me like fill the time during this quarantine, I suppose.
Right.
So that I don't look at the news or something tragic.
It's another thing people can do for their mental health is don't watch too much news.
Don't watch too much news, exercise in small doses.
Yep, I love it. What are the books, documentaries, or podcasts that you recommend or share the most?
Books, documentaries, or podcasts. depends what the recommendation is for. I'm currently reading Peace in Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. What do you say? How do you say it? I don't know how to say his name. But it's really just going back to the rudimentals of meditation, down to like how you're sitting and breathing, to like the transcendental parts of it. So I really enjoy reading books like that to just kind of help whatever practice I'm trying to get good at. You can't get good at meditation, but I recently signed up for a 21-day meditation challenge as a way to just kind of be accountable to show up every day for 21 days. And I'm telling this to everyone. Now is the time to develop a new habit.
Absolutely.
When you don't really have anywhere to go, you have literally no excuse not to take 10 minutes out of your day each day to better your life. So yeah.
And the last question is called the Hollywood Vampires. I haven't asked this in a while, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Hollywood Vampires. The original Hollywood Vampires wasn't a band. It was a drinking club. It was Alice Cooper, Keith Moon from The Who, Ringo Starr, John Lennon, and Mickey Dolenz. Those are the regulars of are part of that club. And they would just hang out in dark bars and tell stories and kind of just hide themselves away from the public eye and just have fun. If you had to put together your version of the Hollywood Vampires, who are the 4 to 5 people that would be part of your drinking club? Or we can just make it a meditation
No, I like the drinking club. My meditation club.
And they can be dead or alive.
What? Okay, good. Yeah, I was going way back to the dead. Well, Jerry. Duh. Are they all musicians?
Those have to be anybody.
Yeah. I mean, Duane Allman, Jerry Garcia, and Jimi Hendrix, and like Albert Einstein would be a hilarious crew.
I love it. Where can people learn more about Backline and all the things that you guys are doing? I list all the resources, and I'll share this all in the show notes as well, so people can find all the links there.
Yeah, so backline.care is our website, but I'm much better at updating our social media. So backline-care is both Facebook and Instagram, and we're pretty active on there. And another reason I like pointing people to our social media, because we share a lot of other people's content. And so it's kind of just like a continuous flow of mental health and wellness resources.
Awesome. I love it. And before I ask you the last question I ask everyone, just thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for what you do. It's such an important need in our industry, and really for everyone in the world. These are things that everyone needs to be more aware of, and hopefully through COVID-19, maybe one of the positives that will come out of it is that we are having more conversations about things like this because we have time to talk about this. So just really thankful for the things that you do and that you're bringing us to our industry and are trying to spread awareness of that. Very admirable and inspiring work.
Thank you.
And then the question I ask everyone is, what's your definition of making it?
Definition of making it. I think that making it means that you've gotten to a place where people are recognizing that the work you're doing is important for the larger community, but also that you're personally at a place where you're comfortable, I guess. There's less anxieties financially and professionally, and you feel good about the work you're doing because it's important to the community that you're trying to serve.